Business Breakfast Series. This is the time when you all turn your chairs around so you can face the speaker. Oh, Jim. My name is Morning. Before we begin our program, I want to take a moment to thank our 2020 series sponsors. They include AT&T, Cross Insurance, New Dimensions Federal Credit Union, Nicholson, Michoud, and Nadeau, CPAs, O'Donnell, Lee, McCowan, and Phillips, attorneys at law, and Sheridan Construction. Our print media sponsor is the Morning Sentinel, and our radio sponsor is Mix 107.9. We also have a video sponsor, Kennebec Savings Bank. This month, additionally, Central Maine Power Company is sponsoring this breakfast. This is a reminder to please turn off your cell phones in consideration of our guests and our TV audience. And please don't forget to fill out the evaluation forms on your table in front of you. You can either leave them right there or drop them off at the registration booth when you depart. We hope that you were able to visit the Spotlighter tables this morning. Thank you to FAME and New Dimensions Federal Credit Union for being here. And we want to welcome our newest chamber members. For the month of March, we had Alliance Home Inspections, Balfour Farm LLC, Black Travel Maine, and Gun Gal Bullets and Bakery. Upcoming events. I know, I love the name. Upcoming events. We have a ribbon cutting coming up on April 20th in Norwich Walk at the Maine Laboratories LLC. That's the only lab in Maine that tests for PFAS. So we invite you to join us to that. We're hosting a listening session with Maddie Daughtry and Kristen Cloutier. Maddie's a senator, Kristen's a representative in the House. It's on paid family medical leave. So if you're a small business owner, and it doesn't matter if you have 2 employees or 2,000, this is coming. These legislators want to get feedback from the business community on how you would like the legislation shaped. It's a free session. We're doing it at the Fairfield Community Center from 3:30 to 5:30 on Monday, May 11th. And the deal is, if this legislation isn't good enough, then they've collected enough signatures to get it on the ballot. So you can have a voice or you cannot have a voice in how it's shaped. On Tuesday, May 2nd, from 11:30 to 1, in the Chamber Boardroom, we're hosting a new member orientation, or if you have new employees, a member refresher. So you can either Zoom in or you can come and have a free lunch and learn about how you can get the most value out of your Chamber membership. If you need the Zoom link, Cindy's your gal. On May 11th, we are doing part 1 of a 2-part series as a business breakfast. It's entitled Building Brand Loyalty and Discovering Your Audience. It's focused on audience communication, brand consistency, and measuring and tracking marketing performance through Google Analytics. And that's with presenters Paula and Derek Slayton. They are managing partners of Trampoline Advertising. And of course, that's right here in this room at Best Western from 7:15 to 9 a.m. Our next business breakfast, business after hours, is Wednesday, May 17th at Waterville Creates, which is located in the new Shump Art Building downtown at 93 Main Street. It's from 5:30 to 7. And if you haven't signed up for our business-to-business showcase, last I knew we had 29 booths left, but we're selling out very, very rapidly. We have moved that from March to May. It is now May 18th. It's from noon to 6, and we've moved it to Thomas College. So very accessible parking. And you don't have to fight with the weather, hopefully. Today's speaker, Leslie Lenig, will address mental health issues in the workplace due to stressors on employees such as pandemics, inflation, and general national unrest, sharing ways that employers can support your workforce. When you ask questions, please wait till Cindy gets the microphone to you because we are live streaming this and taping it to rebroadcast on local access cable television, and it's up on YouTube. It gives me pleasure right now to introduce Michelle Jolalabi, who's the Chief Human Resource Officer at Thomas College, and she's also the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce Board Chair, and she is going to introduce Leslie for us. Michelle?
Good morning and welcome. It is my pleasure to introduce Leslie Lenig this morning. Leslie Lenig, LCSW, has worked for Community Health and Counseling Services, CHCS, for over 12 years. Currently, she is the regional manager for the southern region of CHCS, as well as the clinical lead for the agency. Leslie received her MSW degree from Boston College Graduate School of Social Work in 2006, but has been working in the field since 1998. Leslie has co-written 2 curriculums utilized with at-risk youth in central and southern Maine since 2006, the Adolescent Anger Management Program and Skills for Responsible Thinking. She is trained in trauma-informed practices as both a practitioner and as a supervisor. In her current role, she oversees many programs such as therapeutic foster care, child and adult case management, outpatient therapy, the early childhood consultation program, the resource parent care team, home community-based treatment, and the crisis care coordination program. Leslie has been involved in several projects, including an electronic app for more efficient documentation called BELLS, the Consumer Engagement Forum, and provides group supervision for all of the licensed clinicians in the agency. She is developing several initiatives, including the Internal Staff Development Institute, the Ethics Review Board, and the Case Review Council. She has lived in Maine for 25 years and enjoys spending time outdoors fishing, ATVing, snowmobiling, and hiking with her wife at their place on Moosehead Lake. Please join me in welcoming Leslie Lenig.
Thank you. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to present here. This has been kind of a new common thing that I'm being requested at non-mental health places to come and talk about mental health because of the world today. So I appreciate the invitation, and I tend to talk fast. I tend to pace a lot, so if you need me to slow down, just let me know. But so today we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about general mental health. I look at some of the current trends out there. I will offer to share the PowerPoint at the end of this presentation, so because I'm not going to necessarily go over every statistic that I have on here, because I can't stand to be at trainings when somebody just reads the slide. So I'm not going to do that. So looking at helping you guys identify signs and symptoms of some of your employees if they're going to be struggling with mental health or what we're going to call and talk about as burnout. Different ways that you can support it. I have some action steps that are on here that you can look at as business leaders to be able to implement within your program. So I like to kind of acknowledge right at the beginning that it feels like we're talking about mental health a lot more lately, and it's true. After, in the state of where we are, political unrest, as we were talking about, pandemic, those pieces, we've all gone through what we call a collective trauma. As a nation, we've gone through this. And so mental health and mental health symptoms are a huge thing. That is a current topic, whether you're talking about schools and the kids that are suffering from different places, all the way up to any of the customers that are coming into your businesses that are angry at you. We were just talking about that it just feels like people are coming in angry and ready to fight. We're dealing with this on a regular basis. You throw that in, the collective trauma that we've in, with the workforce shortage, we're all stressed. So then our employees are feeling stressed. Our leaders are feeling stressed out because we don't have enough people to do the work that we're trying to do. And sometimes we're sitting there and hiring people because we need somebody in the seat, and then we're having to deal with the outcomes of that. So just some statistics just to kind of put some perspective out there for you guys after COVID. So 53% of the people, if you look at the top there, think that mental health benefits are essential to have at their job. That's an increase from where it is. The other one that I'll put in there is 62% reported positive mental health right now. That's a drop. That's a drop since pre-COVID. It'll only be 28%. 40% of employees said that their companies don't provide adequate support around mental health needs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because this is what's causing a new culture shift within any of our employees and our businesses. So I'm going to start by just having an assumption that people aren't too familiar with mental health. And so I'm just going to kind of break down what mental health is, just so that we're all on the same page on that. So if we're talking about positive mental health, it's the level of psychological well-being and the ability to function in the world. It's the ability to cope with stressors, be productive, be autonomous, right? And so with that as a definition, we can all acknowledge that we all suffer with mental health stuff periodically, right? Like there are days that I'm not able to cope with stressors, right? There are days I just want to stay in bed and curl up. And so we all deal with mental health on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that you're diagnosable at that point in time, right? But you're dealing with signs and symptoms. So who's affected by mental health? Everybody, right? There is nobody who can hide from it. It is out there. It's equal opportunity. There's statistics from Mid-Maine that happened early 2020 that was 1 in 5 adults have a mental illness of some kind. That is diagnosable, 1 in 5. So that's about 18% of the population. But since COVID, a lot of studies are pointing this up at between 45 and 50% of people, with anxiety and depression being our top. That's more than doubled in the past 3 years. So it is an epidemic. This is its own epidemic. And again, anxiety and depression being your top 2. Some statistics out there, I just wanted to point out a couple. So we got the 40% of people, that's kind of what I was just talking about, are reporting 1 or more symptoms associated with a mental illness. EAP, so employee assistance program usages, has gone up from 5% to 22% since 2019. It's a huge jump in services for employee assistance programs out there. 1 in 12 people reported suicidal thoughts over the past 3 years. That's an increase. That used to be 1 in 20, and it's now 1 in 12. These are more statistics. Again, this is why I'm going to share you, but these are studies that have been going on for about 2,500 employees and looking at these pieces. So, but I kind of want to bring your attention down to the managers and supervisors section down on the bottom as leaders that are on here. You've got 64% said that their mental health has affected their ability to do their job over the past year. That's compared to 57% of non-managers, so of employees. So managers are expressing a lot more stress than even employees are. We're going to talk about that a little bit. 30% said they're actively looking to change employers over the next year. That's compared to 22% of non-managers. So managers are having their own unique stress that's associated with this. Okay, so I just want to give some pieces around what some of these the most common mental illnesses are out there that we're looking at, just so that we can have an understanding. So depression, most people have heard this term, and a lot of people think that this is kind of that, if you picture somebody who's depressed, right, you kind of picture that quintessential movie scene in a movie, right? That woman who's sitting on her couch, her hair's a mess, she's in pajamas, she's probably got a cat on her, she's got blankets all over her, and she's like wailing and crying, and people are like, that's depression. It's not, actually. Depression is numbness. So the first description of the woman is on your left, right? On your right is actually what depression is. It is this numbness. It's feeling nothing. It's not feeling joy. It's not feeling sadness. It's not feeling anger. It's feeling dead inside is what most people describe. And the hard part, and I actually personally think, and I have practiced before for many years, depression is one of the hardest illnesses to treat. Because the exact thing that's going to make somebody feel better who's depressed is the exact thing they don't want to do. And what's not helpful is for you to look at them and be like, just get dressed and come outside with us. You'll feel better if you're around friends. That's not going to help them. So just kind of recognizing that depression is not just somebody crying. So you're not going to necessarily notice somebody. It's not going to be your coworker who's crying at her desk, although that might be a sign or symptom. It's not going to be that person. It's going to be the person who's dead inside, who doesn't show any affect on their face, and they're really struggling. Anxiety. So we all experience anxiety, right? Public speaking. If somebody were to tell you guys that you're about to go out and have to talk to a bunch of people, or you guys switch places with me and come speak, right? Most people are gonna experience some anxiety feelings right there, right? You feel it in your stomach, you get flushed, you do any of that stuff. That's anxiety. We all deal with that on a regular basis. But if you are diagnosable with anxiety, this is what it feels like. It is everywhere. You feel it in everything. You feel rapid heart rate, you feel kind of jumpy, your legs are moving. Everything is anxious. Everything that you look at, you catastrophize everything, right? I always joke because my wife and I have been together for 25 years, and I say that I'm dating myself in the sense that when we first got together, we had pagers, and if I didn't return her page within like 10 seconds, I was dead on the side of the road, right? And I'm sitting there going, okay, but I don't have a cell phone, so I got to go find a phone, and I'm working, right? So there was that whole piece. So after about 6 months of dating, I finally was like, maybe we should go talk to a doctor, right? So we went and got her on some medications, and now medications, they're great. It doesn't cure it. Now I got about a 15-minute window on this. So, emojis are wonderful. I can just shoot and be like, I'm alive, I'm not dead on the side of the road. And she tracks me, so we're good. But so that's anxiety. Somebody who lives with that on a regular basis and just can't get out of that. They just go from feeling okay to panic almost instantaneous. Post-traumatic stress disorder is another one that's common, and a lot of us are going to be having some symptoms that are associated with this following the pandemic, following a car accident, following any of that, right? So we talk about big T trauma and little T trauma when we're talking about post-traumatic stress. Big T traumas, those traumas that we all can agree on, right? That would be traumatic. Active shooter situation, sexual abuse, any of those big war-torn country, right? We can all agree that obviously that's going to be absolutely traumatic for somebody to go through. Little T trauma is more subjective. It has more to do with you and your perception of the world, right? So divorce, to some people can be traumatic, to other people can be invigorating, right? So it's not the same thing for everybody. A car accident, right? Any of those things, a pandemic, any of those things can cause trauma in our lives. And so when you have trauma, when you have post-traumatic stress disorder, not everybody who has a traumatic event is going to have PTSD. But if you get to a PTSD place, what this is a damaged fight or flight sense, right? So you're kind of searching the world for that proverbial tiger all over the place, right? Everything you think might be dangerous to you. And so you're constantly on edge. Your baseline's up here. So you have excess adrenaline in your body, your blood pressure's increased, your aspirations are higher. So all of this piece kind of leads to not being able to sleep well, having intrusive thoughts, being hypervigilant on things, being jumpy. All those things can be associated with PTSD. And it can last weeks, months, years without treatment. There's a lot of really great treatment in there, but this is a actual diagnosable illness out there that really can damage a lot of a person's life. So chronic stress. So what I'm going to talk about within chronic stress, because this is what we've been living with, right? So chronic stress is when we experience stress that goes on longer than it should, right? So we start having extra cortisol pumping through our bodies, right? We all start having that. So you're caught in this constant stress place at this point in time. And so that fight, flight, or freeze mechanism within our bodies is a little bit damaged, and we almost are sitting on edge of that on a constant basis. So chronic stress, you're going to have a ton of symptoms that are associated with this. And you guys might be looking at part of this and deciding, okay, so yeah, I got that, right? This is what happens. And if you ever go back for your master's of social work, you're going to sit in every class being like, ooh, I have that diagnosis. I have that diagnosis. So, and my mom has that one. So these are all associated with chronic stress. And this is what a lot of our employees are suffering from. This can lead to what we're going to call as compassion fatigue or burnout or secondary traumatic stress. So we're going to talk about those things. But these are all different symptoms and signs that you're living within that chronic stress world. All right, so why is this affecting us? People are quitting our jobs, right? You got that great resignation phenomenon that's out there, right? This is what's happening. So the top 5 reasons that people are leaving jobs at this point in time are low compensation, toxic work environments, negatively affecting our mental health, feeling undervalued, and no career path for career advancement. So those are the top 5 reasons people are leaving positions. These are some insights. So they're doing a lot of studies based on this, you know, the great resignation out there, right? They're doing a lot of studies about why people are leaving fields that they've studied in, right? Why teachers are saying, I'm done, and moving into the private sector. Why social workers are throwing out their license and going and doing other things. Why people are just not staying in their fields of choice at this point in time. And these are a lot of places that are out there. So most people aren't seeking help. There's not enough services out there. There's wait lists. I was just talking to these guys about it. There's, you know, at my agency, we're about a 6-7 month wait list for therapy. And we're a large agency. We have 400 employees. We serve the entire state. And that's 6 or 7 months for telehealth therapy. If you want to see somebody in person, you're probably 9 months out. So that's scary. And those are the people that want help. Most people don't ask for help. Most people don't want to go see a therapist for whatever reason it is. More people are now discussing mental health in the workplace. So we've got to do a culture shift, right? Before, I know my HR department, and I work in a mental health agency, but my HR department was like, nope, don't talk about that. You can't talk about that to anybody. We're talking about it now. We're talking about how people are feeling about things. We're asking them how their days are going. We're checking in with them. We're encouraging them to take time off. We have to do a culture shift, no matter what organization you're in. We have to do it because we've got to be able to support our employees, or we're all going to be in a lot more trouble. Number 3, managers lack the knowledge and the resources to support their employees. That's a huge one. Because if your supervisors, if your managers don't know what they're looking for and don't know how to support their employees, that's a trickle-down effect, right? And they're not going to feel supported and they're going to want to leave. So we've got to start teaching our leadership how to do this and how to support our employees. The other part is that we're experiencing stress and burnout at increased levels, so we have to get a better work design out there. We've got to figure out how to be able to support that within whatever your context is, whatever your business model is. We have to be able to figure out a way to support them when they start getting at this high level of chronic stress and burnout. So some action steps that are here. First one is you got to listen to your employees and encourage dialogue around mental health. We were talking about that. You got to put mental health on the agenda. You've got to do trainings. You got to pull people in, right? Contact local nonprofit mental health agencies out there and ask them to come in and do a presentation like this. I'm being asked more and more, banks are contacting me left and right, actually, at this moment, to come in and do trainings on how to deal with angry people. I do a presentation called Building Empathy, because unfortunately the answer is your staff has to handle it. We can't change angry people. So we're seeing this, but do that for your businesses. Get people to come in, do some presentations and be able to talk about it. There are a lot of resources online. There are a lot of resources just locally that will come out and talk to you, but put it on the agenda. Get your agency talking about it. Get your business talking about it. Be specific about the resources in your ads for people, about what resources you have for employees, right? So don't just say, you know, oh, we support any mental and physical health. It's not specific enough. Say that we have an employee assistance program that offers, you know, 5 free therapy sessions, or whatever your EAP is, or we have paid family medical leave, those types of things. Be specific, because people are looking for this now. Lead by example. You guys all, as managers and leaders of businesses and employees, you do it. Talk about it. If you're feeling stressed, say that. Be genuine. You don't have to break down in tears and be like, oh my God, my life's a mess. But you just have to sit there and just be like, yeah, that was a really rough day. I had a hard day today. Making sure that you get that out there, because if they see you doing it, managers can do it, then employees can do it, and they know that it's not dangerous, right? When I say dangerous, a lot of employees, we're talking about stigma, they think that if they talk about this, it's going to negatively impact them. Some of them think they'd lose their job if they even told their boss that they were stressed out, right? If my boss doesn't think I can handle this, I'm going to get a bad evaluation. I'm going to be asked to leave, right? So we have to talk about it, because people can't feel that way, right? If you feel like you can't talk about feeling stressed at work, it's just going to build. You're going to be a soda bottle, right? And all of a sudden you're going to explode. So we have to do it. Proactively check in with your teams, right? I every time I hold supervision, whether it's group or not, I go around and I ask everyone, how you doing? How you feeling? Have you taken a vacation recently? Check in with them. Make sure that they know that you care and that you're able to have that conversation and that you are strong enough to hear the answer, right? That you're strong enough to sit there and say, okay, all right, what do we need to do? How can I support you through that? And be conscious of language, right? This is a small shift, and I know that we get really sensitive around politically correct language, and I know that everybody wants everybody to, say the right thing, but if you're walking around being like, oh my God, that lady was crazy, that's not real conducive to breaking down this stigma, right? So making sure that you're watching all of those components and watching your own language around it to be able to support this culture of talking about it within your agency. We have to talk. We have to have less stigma. It's getting better. I mean, I'm here. I'm talking. You guys asked to have something on mental health, so that's great, because 5 years ago, never would have been asked to come to something like this. So that's a first step. Continue talking about it. Action step 2, ensure access to care. I get this, it's hard. I get small businesses, it's hard to put any kind of resources out there. There are free resources out there. There are things that you can do to support your employees in different ways. But just making sure that your mental health and substance use, I skipped over those statistics. On the other one, huge increase in alcohol use and illicit drug use has all increased a lot. And so making sure that substance use treatment is also in on this. Make sure that people know how to access them. If your insurance covers it, making sure people know how to access those kinds of services within their insurance. If you have an EAP, making sure that people understand what EAPs are and how that can support them and how they can access them. Because in interviews, a lot of people don't even know how to access an EAP if your agency offers it, because nobody talks about it. So making sure that you have that out there. If you don't have access to it, contact local companies. See if they have any ability to work out a contract with you to do some short-term therapy for your employees. I know that my agency has done that in the past, where we're able to, if you contact us, we go in and we say, okay, we'll do 3 to 5 sessions with somebody to help support them. So local agencies can do that. Provide trainings for staff on a regular basis. Find out what they need. Find out what they want to do. I had a credit union reach out to me, and they just wanted 1 training, and now they have me on the docket for 6 for the rest of the year, because they want their staff kept asking for different things that were in there. So making sure that you're providing trainings, and then be flexible with your staff if they need some help, right? As long as you can do that, being able to give them a break, let them get out early on an afternoon if they're particularly stressed. Let them flex some time around if they have to get to an appointment. Being able to be flexible about that shows a tremendous amount of support. If somebody is experiencing stress, depression, anxiety, and their employer is like, yeah, absolutely, go take that hour, come back to work afterwards. Show that flexibility. Number 3, supporting not only your employees' mental health, but their kids, right? So what became really obvious to us during the pandemic is that the challenges of being a parent in that world and trying to balance out your workforce, right? So what we do know is that very few things can actually distract one of our employees than if their kid's sick or not doing well. And a mom or a dad, if that's their case, completely distracted from work. They're not 100%. They're not doing everything I need them to do if their child is suffering at home for whatever that is. So making sure that you can be also flexible for them. If their kid has to get to a therapy appointment, right? If their kid needs to go to a doctor, what do you do there? So a therapy appointment should be at the same level. So being able to support your employees and with their kids. So managers and leaders, we need to do a special kind of support to them. Because what's happening, what we're realizing is that leaders and supervisors, they're not only dealing with their own stuff, but they're now also dealing with their employees' stuff. They're holding that burden. And they often feel like they need to hold that burden for their staff. And so now they're compounded. Everything is compounded. And being able to sit there and increase their mental health literacy, getting them to understand what signs and symptoms that they can look out for, they're your eyes and ears on the floor. If my supervisors that I oversee are able to come and be like, hey Les, Sally's really struggling. This is what I'm seeing. I'm nervous about her. She hasn't been checked in. She hasn't done as much as she usually does. That helps us. Because in the long run, we can come in and we can help support that employee. And now I have an employee who feels supported and is happier and is able to re-engage in work at a quicker pace. So making sure that your supervisors are having some support around this, around mental health and around trainings to be able to promote employee satisfaction, employee mental health. We want to make sure that we talk to our managers about being empathetic, right? We're going to talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy in a little bit, but making sure that they're empathetic to people because mental health conditions are common and they're treatable. We just need to support our staff through it. Action step 5 is combating burnout, right? So there's actually a new phenomenon out there called rust out, which is different than burnout. So burnout, if you think about it, right, if you have a candle and I snuff it, right, it's hard to relight that, right? Or if you think of a car that has burned out, right, you're probably not going to get that back on the road. Burnout signifies this like permanent, done. So rust out is this more like, picture an old, Datsun, if you're old enough to know what a Datsun is, right? And it's rusted out and it's gone there. Well, you can put some Bondo, some paint, and we can get that back on. It just needs some love and care, right, to get it back on the road. And that's what rust out should be, is that with love and care, we can get our employees re-engaged and back in here so that they're not leaving fields, so that they're still doing what they're passionate about. So we've got to support that work-life balance. We've got to talk about that. We have to talk about work-life balance. We have to educate them on chronic stress, similar to what we're doing right now. Respecting time off and after hours. If somebody has a vacation, let them have a vacation. That resonating for some people? All right. So, right, if they're on vacation, don't call them. Figure out how to get an answer out there, right? But respecting those times. Because that's what we all need. We all want it, right? When you take a vacation, you don't want to be contacted by work, so don't contact your staff. Let them have that vacation. Let them have those after hours, right? They're done work at 5, let them have it. Not everybody likes to work 70 hours a week. Address personnel issues as they arise, right? This can be hard, right? You have that one employee that everybody's annoyed with, and nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to address it, and so we just all ignore it. That erodes morale more than anything, right? That starts creating this really toxic environment, and what's happening is that people are watching this person who's either not carrying their own weight, coming in late, talking bad about people. Everybody's watching that, and what they're seeing is that nobody's taking care of it, so why should I try so hard? Why should I come in on time, right? So pretty soon you got this pervasive issue within everybody. And so addressing those, right, as supervisors and leaders, we have to be okay with having hard conversations. We have to be okay with calling somebody out and saying, look, you've got to stop A, B, and C. We need to see this happening. So addressing any of those personnel issues that come out. Workplace assessments, right? Send out a survey periodically, every 6 months. How are people doing? Do you feel supported? That way you have a pulse on what people are feeling. That way you are having full knowledge on whether or not your staff are happy, whether or not you're missing the mark completely in terms of supporting them. But every 6 months, send out a survey. It's not hard. SurveyMonkey is not that expensive. You can send out, you can have a really cheap account with them. I think it's like $4.85 for a year for like 200 surveys or something. You can get through it. Write your own, do it on paper. But do something to be able to assess whether or not your staff's happy. Just by doing that, there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of research that says that even just by doing that, staff feel cared about. They feel like their opinion matters. It's 2 times a year. So millennials are the largest part of our workforce at this point in time, right? They just are, right? That's the generation, they're the largest part of this workforce. And what's happening is that we're seeing these younger generations are now specifically searching out employers who respect mental health, have benefits for mental health, and support people going through struggles with this. So pretty soon, this is all we're gonna have to have this. This is why I'm saying it's a culture shift. We have to think of a different way to work because we've got to start putting this up at the same level as a doctor's appointment. This has to change. It has to switch. This is what the younger workforce, and it's not going to change. The centennials are going to feel the same way, if not even more pushed out at that. That's another training that's worth getting to, is generational workforces. It's fascinating stuff about why communication doesn't happen very easily between the different generations is because our value systems are different. Fascinating work. Definitely recommend a training on. All right, so what can you do to support your employees? So we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, right? So emotional intelligence, anybody heard of emotional intelligence before? Okay. So emotional intelligence, you can actually get a score, right? Like an IQ score, basically. And there's a lot of things online for this. And emotional intelligence is the ability to have these 5 core components, right? So it's the self-awareness. It's being able to understand how you're reacting in a situation based on the out pieces that are coming in at you, right? And understanding what the baggage is that you bring, right? So self-regulation, your ability to kind of curb those negative impulses that are out there. Motivation, passion for work that goes beyond a paycheck, right? Do you have motivation to be here that's more than just the fact that I'm writing a paycheck to you every morning, right? Do you care about your job? That's important. Empathy, I'm gonna talk a lot about empathy. Social skill, the ability to establish relationships with people, right? So emotional intelligence, the higher you score with these things, the better you are to be able to capably handle stress, handle difficult conversations, be involved in sitting with people who are struggling, right? So the higher that emotional intelligence. And the reason we're talking about that is because similar to what I do with people that are at the bank who are dealing with angry people that are coming in, we've got, the only thing that we can control is ourselves, right? So if somebody's coming at me and yelling at me, there's nothing I can do to get that person to stop yelling at me in that theory, right? They're coming at me. How I respond in that moment is going to do everything to be able to stop that. So in order to deal with these angry people coming at us, we've got to change our way of responding to them. And that's what emotional intelligence is talking about. So empathy is the one that I really focus on, because if this is done well, you can kind of pull down any explosion. You can really reduce a lot of anger with empathy. So it's the one for us to truly understand. And I usually have a video on here that does a good example of empathy versus sympathy. For those of you who have ever heard of Brene Brown, she's a social worker who does a lot of TED Talks. If you look at on YouTube and you type in Brene Brown, B-R-E-N-E, Brown, and do sympathy versus empathy, it's a great video that shows people, okay, this is what the difference is, right? To sit with somebody and look at them and just be like, wow, that was tough. I'm sorry you're going through that, right? That's empathy. Instead of being like, oh, that sucks to be you. That feels very different, right? It's joining the person. It's not taking in their pain, but it's joining that person. It's sitting there with them and recognizing that whatever reason, what they're going through is tough. And if you aren't an empathetic person to begin with, the good news is you can fake it. You can absolutely fake being empathetic, and it's going to grow. Think of hostage negotiators, right? There's a lot of research around hostage negotiators who sit there and they're talking with the person holding people hostage, right? Talking to them, trying to get them to surrender. And if you talk to those hostage negotiators afterwards, they actually feel for that person who went in and took all those hostages. They actually feel badly that that person felt that they had no other plan. That was the only thing they could do. That's faking empathy, right? That's being able to go in there. So you can fake empathy. And so, but you got to sell it. That's where it comes, because empathy that's not sold genuinely falls flat every single time and actually feels like somebody's really kind of tapping them down and not being able to support them. So making sure that you do that. And if you are doing this, it's a bridge builder for our employees. It builds trust and a happier workforce. It's also empathy directly related to job satisfaction. In a lot of studies, if they feel like their supervisors or their organization is empathetic, they feel more satisfied at their jobs. So feeling with the person, I jumped myself ahead of it. So the little image there, that was instead of showing you the video. Keeping our responses, there are a million iceberg depictions out there on anything, right? You can put behavior up at the top, you can put a lot of different things up there. But the bottom line is we never know what people are dealing with. In some of my longer workshops, one of the things that I do is I would have had balloons on everybody's table with some magic markers and asked you guys all to put down on each one stressors that are in your life, and then blow the balloon up and then bring them up here, right? So I just got my heating oil bill that was $1,500, or had a fight with my partner this morning, my dryer broke, my dog is sick, whatever's stressing you out, right? I'd have you all right onto that. We'd easily have, with the group this size, we'd easily have like 150 people or balloons up here. And then I'd pick on one of you and I'd ask one of you guys to come up here, and I'd pick up one balloon and I'd toss it to Kim. Kim can catch that one, no problem. I'm gonna throw a couple at her. Pretty soon, she's gonna struggle to hold those all in her hands, right? And she's gonna start dropping them, and you're gonna watch her stress level go up. And these are just balloons. But you're gonna watch her stress level go up because she's not able to contain them. And at some point, they're all gonna start falling, and she's not going to. And what that's depicting is that we all have that one last balloon that's gonna make us get really stressed out, and we're gonna respond in that way, right? And our fuse is gonna get shorter, and we're gonna get angrier, and we're not gonna be able to hold this. We might get embarrassed, right? Because anger is a secondary emotion. It's always resulting from something else. So we're holding on to these balloons, but they're falling out, right? And so if the dog is sick, the dog got sick on the rug, is that balloon that falls down, the one that makes her kind of lose her anger at that point in time? We know it's not about the puke on the floor. It's about everything else, right? I always tell people in couples counseling, it's not about the socks, right? You didn't just explode about socks. It's about something else that's boiling up. And that's the same concept. And so being able to understand that anger of that person walking through the door, it's not about you. It's actually probably not even about your business. It's about the fact that they've probably talked to 100 other people about trying to get their support, or they just dealt with, their child's school and their kid is suspended for the 6th time. Whatever it is, that anger coming at you, especially if that's a brand new relationship, it's a customer just walking through the door, that's not about you. That's why it's important that we change our empathy, because we cannot change anything until we do that back at them. So mental health, we say you can't pour from an empty cup. What that means basically is you got to take care of yourself, right? Because in social work, right, in therapy, I'm not going to be any good to somebody else if I'm completely burnt out, if I am completely stressed out. I'm not going to be able to sit with somebody and hear their problems, right? I always joke, because I'm an LCSW, and of course I had to do therapy to get through my degree. I never wanted to be a therapist. There's nothing worse, personally, than sitting for 8 hours a day listening to everybody else's problems. I got into it because I wanted to be a manager, but some people are really good at it, thankfully. But this is one of those things that people have to do. They have to make sure they're filling their cup. They have to. They have to have that work-life balance. They have to have some passion, because if they don't, they're not going and being 100% for that client. And those clients and those customers, they need us to be 100%. So we have to model it from top down, right? You CEOs, you presidents of companies, you've got to demonstrate work-life balance. Because if you're returning emails at 11:30 at night, I guarantee you some of your staff think, oh crap, I got to work at 11:30 at night and return emails, right? So you've got to model that. You have to be able to show that you have some boundaries around your own personal time as well. So burnout, we talked about it. I talked about rust out, but this is a phenomenon that if you are burnt out with your job, it is really hard to re-engage. It is really hard to come back from that. And so we've got to be able to recognize when we're feeling burnt out, right? When things that are bothering you don't usually bother you, that's a good sign, right? If you're coming home and you're thinking about work at night, at home, your whole drive home, whatever it is, you might be starting to head down the burnout path. You've got to pay attention to yourself. You've got to know what's going on for you. So signs and symptoms of burnout, this is important for everyone to know, because if you're feeling any of these things, you might want to start thinking about a vacation. Excessive blaming, being jumpy, bottle up emotions, legal problems, nightmares, any of this stuff. Chronic physical ailments, trouble sleeping, right? Mental health, physical health, hugely related. And if you are really struggling with your mental health, you're going to have some psychosomatic issues. You might have some chest pains. You might have chronic headaches. Your stomach might hurt. You got to pay attention to that stuff, because those could be signs and symptoms of burnout. Poor self-care, not wanting to shower every day, barely wanting to get up, avoiding certain clients, avoiding certain meetings, avoiding certain coworkers, supervisors. All that stuff can be associated with burnout. More of them. There's a lot, right? So you've got any of this stuff, and this is part of that emotional intelligence, right? You've got to be able to know whether or not it's abnormal for you, right? If you're somebody, I have trouble sleeping, I always have, right? I wake up at 3:11 every morning, I don't know why, but 3:11 every morning, I always have trouble sleeping. So that's not a sign for me that I'm burnt out. Quite the opposite. If I sleep through the night, something's going on. So being able to look at and knowing what's out of norm for you, that's the important piece, to be able to balance that out. So what do you do with it? First part, awareness. Just like everything, you can go online and you can do a little questionnaire if you want, find out if you're burned out. If you're not able to figure it out yourself, you can ask a question and it will tell you about it. So making sure that you're constantly performing it. Just because you're not burnt out today doesn't mean you won't be next week. Right? We all have rough weeks. Talk about it. Talk to your supervisor. Talk to a trusted friend. What I will say about this is, if you like to vent, right? So a lot of us like venting, and venting actually has a lot of really positive responses for you, right? It does a lot for your hormones. It calms you down. Venting is actually shown to be really, really good and successful, but only up to 7 minutes. After 7 minutes of venting, you actually start doing the opposite. You start rallying yourself back up and increasing blood pressure, increasing that. My staff laughs at me because I'll look at them and be like, okay, 1 more minute. Because after 7 minutes, it's not effective anymore. So keep that in mind. Balance and boundaries. Establish them. Do what you need to. Shut your phone off at 5 if you need to, if you have a boss that calls you all the time. Do what you need to do to set these boundaries. Seek professional help if you can. There's no shame in going to a therapist. There is a long wait list, but there's no shame in, I hate saying that because, there's just not a lot of help out there right now. But sometimes friends and coworkers are great, but sometimes you need somebody who's unbiased. and somebody who's going to sit there and maybe challenge you a little bit on it. Be able to look at that. Most professions don't have supervision like mental health does, right? My staff have to meet with me once a week for an hour every week. That's what mental health does for support to our staff. And I'm starting being asked, I'm now doing it for public nursing. I'm now doing it for teachers. I'm now doing it for another set of nurses. So being able to look at clinical support is really, really important. And so being able to look at that, find out what kind of support's out there for your staff. Other things you can do, take vacation time, talk about it, 7 minutes as a little reminder. Minimize your time around negative coworkers, right? We all have those. We all have those coworkers that are sitting there and just are negative about their job constantly. Move away from them. Don't sit by them, right? Negativity grows, so does positivity. So be the other part of it. Leave work at work, especially client contact, as best you can, and have fun. Try to laugh. Try to have fun at your job. Do little things that are fun. We do practical jokes on each other. You know, we do things like that to make people laugh. Just something small, right? Get those big coloring sheets and hang it on the staff wall where you guys can all just go in and color for a little bit, right? Do something like that. We have a whiteboard that we do a question a day, and we say, what's your favorite spring activity? Or what's your favorite Christmas song? So that people can go in and it's very simple, doesn't cost any money. These are also specific. I mean, there's a lot of trainings for this. You can go to yoga class, you can exercise. Professional counseling, music is good, right? I listen to audiobooks when I'm leaving my work. So being able to do that. So I have them separated between at work, what you can do, have a self-care buddy, outside of work, different things that you can do. We do sunny day files at my job too. Keep a file, get a manila folder, and anytime somebody says something nice to you, sends you a, thanks so much for helping me out, put it in the folder. And that way, if things aren't going well, you can pull that out, and it does make you feel good, right? On the year anniversary for people, we have a little mason jar, and we ask everyone to write something nice about our staff, and we put it in there, so then if they're having a bad day, they can pull out their little things that say you have a great smile, or you have a great sense of humor. It seems corny, but it helps. And any of that stuff can continue to help you and your employees stay engaged and happier, and that way you're hopefully not going to lose a lot of employees around it. So that's it.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm routinely told by my 3 wonderful daughters that I'm a problem solver. How do you determine when to sympathize, empathize, and solve the problem? And at what point do you transition from sympathize, empathize to problem solver?
Well, the trouble is you're a dad and you're a man. Not to be stereotypical, but those two things are usually problem solvers first. My advice to you would be to always go to the sympathize and empathize until they ask you for help, until they say, help me solve this. Just sit with them. That's one of the #1 things I hear from clients is, and it does tend to come with men, that, my husband always just wants to solve the problem. He doesn't like to see me upset, right? Absolutely, nobody likes to see people upset. It's okay to sit in with that for a little bit. I think what would then happen if they're in that moment and they are coming to you and they're talking to you about a problem, just sit with them about it, give it some time. And if it's a recurring theme, if it seems to be invasive within their life, find another time to have a conversation about it, not in that moment. Because in that moment, they really just need you to listen. They really just need you to be caring. They need you to be their daddy. And to sit there and be with them. And then maybe 2-3 days later, go out to lunch and be like, okay, so I've been thinking about things. Do you want to hear? Would you like to hear some of the things I'm thinking that might help? This is what I did. Have it at a different place, because in that moment in time, they don't need that, and you're just going to push them away. That help? Okay. I just heard I must be a dad. I do it to my wife too. She'll come in and that's why you don't go with it. You don't practice what I preach with my own family, right? My wife will come to me and I'll be like, well, you got to do this, this, and this. She's like, I just need you to listen. So it does happen.
Any other questions?
Is this on? I just have a foolish little one. I really like this 7-minute venting thing. I'm sure we're going to use it at work. Where does the 7? Well, it's going to be very useful. Where does the 7 come from? Is this based off your observations, national statistics? Or
National
I need to be able to
statistics.
quote something.
I'll see if I can find it for you. But it is a whole research study that went into. It's actually studying foster parents and oppositional defiant kids. And what they came up with is that physiologically, your body changes after 7 minutes, and so it starts going back into this stress world after 7 minutes. It watches your stress go down for those 7 minutes and then spikes immediately afterwards. So it is based in research.
They say.
Just say they. You can use my name. Leslie says.
You had mentioned when people are having a stressful time, letting them take off, go out for an hour, go for a walk, come back to work. I have a restaurant, so people are going to get stressed when you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't leave the line. You can't just walk off and go take a break for an hour. So what do you do for people when you have a very high stress position and you can't let them go and take that time?
It's a great question. I get that a lot, especially from restaurants and nurses. So a lot of what I recommend is sitting down and having conversations with them and talk about the creative way to address that. So obviously, dinner rush, we can't do anything. Do you need something different at the beginning of your shift to be able to decompress? Do you need some time? Is there music you can listen to coming into work? Is there after work? Is there something that you need to do? Do you need to talk with me afterwards tomorrow morning? Those types of things. So being able to problem solve with them. Look, I can't do anything for you during this. I can't have you walk off the line. I can't have you do any of this stuff here. But how can I support you elsewhere? Because even just by the act of having that conversation shows that you're caring and you want to do something for them and that you're acknowledging that that's hard work. And so being able to put that there and just acknowledging it will travel worlds for your staff. And then looking at what they can do, so any of those things, deep breathing, those types of things. I mean, there's some quick minute things that you can do with your staff that even in the middle of dinner rush, they can go back and they can do 5 minutes of deep breathing or 5 seconds of deep breathing to be able to kind of pull that down for themselves. So being able to have that conversation will have the same effect.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Leslie.
Absolutely.
That was wonderful. Quickly, I want...
Before we do the drawing,